Jonas Carter had seen a lot of weird things in his time working on outdated space stations across the galaxy. Malfunctioning gravity regulators, airlocks that tried to eject people at random, and vending machines that could probably achieve sentience if given the chance. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for the stray cat that had wandered into Section E9 of Orbital Outpost Theta. At first, he didn't even notice it. He had been too busy kicking a faulty air filter in frustration, as was standard engineering protocol when all else failed. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted something moving. A small, shadowy figure darted between the abandoned storage crates. He frowned. Nothing alive was supposed to be down here. The station had pest control drones, and if anything bigger than a space rat showed up, security would have blasted it into atoms ages ago. Jonas turned, shining his handheld worklight between the crates, and then he saw it. It was just a cat, or at least it looked like a cat. The small, sleek creature sat there, tail curled around its feet, staring directly at him with glowing, swirling eyes that looked like they contained entire galaxies inside them. Its fur shimmered faintly, shifting colors under the artificial lighting, as if bioluminescent patterns were hiding just beneath the surface. Jonas stared. The cat stared back. "Okay," he muttered to himself. "That's new." His first instinct was to report it. Strange alien creatures roaming unmonitored sections of a station usually meant something was about to explode. But then he reconsidered. If he called security, they'd probably eject the poor thing into space, or worse, try to dissect it. And sure, it was definitely not a normal cat, but it wasn't doing anything dangerous. Yet, Jonas took a cautious step forward, reaching out a hand. "All right, buddy, let's not be weird about this." The cat twitched its ears, as if considering his words, and then promptly vanished. Jonas blinked. Wait, what? There was no sound, no flash of light. One moment, the cat was sitting there. The next, it was gone. Jonas turned his head just in time to see it reappear on top of a storage unit 10 feet away, grooming its paw as if nothing happened. "Oh great," Jonas sighed. "A teleporting cat. That's exactly what my life was missing." It took 30 minutes of chasing a makeshift net, and several curse words in multiple languages before Jonas finally managed to catch the little menace. All right, you win, you little void demon," he grumbled as he carried the cat toward his quarters. He wasn't sure why he was bringing it back with him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that, despite its unsettling cosmic aura, it had the same smug attitude as every other cat he'd encountered. Or maybe, deep down, he knew that if he left it alone, it would probably teleport into something important and blow up half the station. Either way, it was his problem now. Jonas' living quarters weren't much, just a small compartment, a bunk, and a workstation cluttered with tools. He set the cat down and pointed a finger at it. "Listen up, little dude. I don't know where you came from, but as long as you're in here, you don't mess with my stuff. You don't teleport into restricted areas," and the cat wasn't listening. It had already curled up on his favorite chair, tail flicking lazily. Jonas sighed. "Figures. Fine, do what you want. Just don't explode." Satisfied, Jonas crashed into his bunk, exhausted from his shift. He barely had time to close his eyes before sleep took him. The next morning, Jonas woke up to 3 immediate problems. 1. His room was glowing. Specifically, the walls were covered in shifting bioluminescent patterns, like someone had let loose a hallucinogenic light show while he slept. 2. His workstation was missing half of its contents, as if a mini black hole had swallowed everything within arm's reach. 3. The cat was no longer alone. Instead, nestled against it were 3 tiny furballs, each glowing in different colors. One of them twitched in its sleep, and a wrench disappeared from across the room in a blink of distorted space-time. Jonas sat up very, very slowly, rubbing his face. Oh no. The cat stretched lazily, blinking at him as if nothing was out of the ordinary. Jonas exhaled. Right. So, I kidnapped an interdimensional cat, and now it had babies in my room. Great. Just great. Jonas got out of bed, stepping cautiously toward the tiny cosmic disasters now residing in his quarters. One of the newborns floated slightly above the ground, as if gravity was just a suggestion. The second one made a soft chirping noise, and an entire shelf vanished from existence. The third was gnawing on a power cable, completely unharmed despite the fact that it was actively absorbing electricity. Jonas ran a hand down his face. I'm gonna need more coffee. He glanced at the mother cat, who simply blinked at him slowly, utterly unbothered. You realize this is a problem, right? Jonas asked, gesturing at the reality-breaking kittens. The cat yawned in response and curled back up, clearly not giving a single damn. Jonas groaned. He had made a huge mistake, and that's when his communicator buzzed. Emergency alert, security breach reported in Sector E9, unidentified anomaly detected. Jonas froze. Then, very slowly, he turned to look at the 3 kittens, who were now climbing up the walls in defiance of physics. He took a deep breath. Okay. Nobody panic, he muttered. The mother cat flicked her tail, and Jonas' entire bunk phased out of existence for exactly 3 seconds before snapping back into reality. Jonas stared. Yeah, he sighed. I'm so screwed. Jonas had dealt with complicated engineering problems before. He had fixed cooling systems on the brink of meltdown, reassembled engines using duct tape and sheer willpower, and even survived an oxygen leak with nothing but chewing gum and panic-induced ingenuity. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for 3 tiny cosmic abominations disguised as kittens. One of them floated in mid-air, as if gravity was just an optional feature. Another kitten flicked its tail, and suddenly, Jonas's toolbox vanished, reappearing upside down on the ceiling. The third was chewing on an exposed power cable, happily absorbing several thousand volts of electricity like it was a light snack. Jonas rubbed his temples. All right. So, this is a problem. The mother cat, curled up on his bunk, gave him a slow, indifferent blink. She clearly did not care. Jonas exhaled, staring at the kittens as they continued defying every known law of physics. He needed to come up with a plan fast before someone in security figured out what was happening and decided the best course of action was to eject all of them into deep space. And, knowing how station security worked, that was exactly what would happen. Kitten number 1. The gravity menace, the first kitten. The one hovering slightly above the floor seemed to control gravity itself. Every time it moved, the pull of gravity in the room shifted unpredictably. Jonas found this out the hard way when he tried to pick the little menace up only for the entire floor beneath him to suddenly reverse direction. 1 second he was standing upright. The next, he was stuck to the ceiling like a discarded piece of space trash. The kitten meowed innocently, floating sideways, as if reality was just a suggestion. Jonas groaned. Oh, perfect. I always wanted to experience what it's like to be a human ceiling tile. The mother cat yawned. Still no concern. Kitten number 2. The teleportation nuisance. Jonas had just managed to push himself off the ceiling when he noticed kitten number 2 sitting on his desk, staring at him. It tilted its tiny cosmic head. Then, with a flick of its tail, Jonas' entire workstation vanished. Poof, gone. Jonas blinked. Where the hell did you just send all my... Before he could finish the sentence, his workstation reappeared, now crammed into the station's small bathroom stall. Jonas buried his face in his hands. You're kidding me, the kitten purred, proud of its contribution to total anarchy. Kitten number 3. The walking power outage. Jonas barely had time to process this disaster before the lights flickered. The emergency alarms blared, and the entire station briefly lost power. For the third time that day, he already knew what was happening. He turned his head slowly, and there it was, kitten number 3, chewing through a high-voltage conduit like it was a delicious snack. Bright blue energy crackled around its tiny teeth as it happily gnawed through what was probably the single most important power line in the entire section. Jonas lunged forward, grabbing the little fur ball and prying it off the cable. No Tajoma. Bad. We do not eat electricity. The kitten just licked its nose and purred louder, clearly unaffected by several million volts of power running through its tiny body. Jonas stared. How are you still alive? The kitten booped his nose with its paw. Then, as if nothing had happened, it trotted back toward the mother cat and curled up beside her. Jonas took a deep breath. His living quarters were now a gravity-defying, teleportation-prone, energy-consuming nightmare, and the worst part, they were adorable. He wanted to be mad, but looking at their tiny paws, wobbly little ears, and unapologetic cosmic smugness, he couldn't do it. Instead, he ran his hands down his face and made a decision. He had 2 options. 1. Find a way to contain them, keep them out of trouble, and make sure nobody on the station realized he was harboring 3 interdimensional calamities in kitten form. 2. Give up, accept his fate, and prepare for a swift and merciless execution once station security found out what was happening. Jonas sighed. Yeah, option 1. Definitely option 1. But as he started thinking of ways to contain them, his communicator buzzed again. Security alert. Station-wide power fluctuations detected. Investigation required. Jonas froze. The kittens looked up at him, eyes wide, tails flicking innocently. Jonas narrowed his eyes. You did this. The kittens purred in unison, completely unbothered. Jonas groaned. This was going to be a very, very long day. Jonas had dealt with galactic malfunctions, reactor leaks, and emergency lockdowns, but nothing compared to the pure existential crisis of trying to parent 3 reality-bending kittens. Every attempt to contain them failed instantly. Gravity Kitten floated away like a helium balloon. Any time he tried to put it in a crate, Teleportation Kitten had no concept of boundaries and would simply blink into another room whenever he tried to lock it somewhere. And Electricity Kitten, well, it had already eaten 3 more power cables, resulting in another station-wide blackout that was now being blamed on cosmic radiation interference. Jonas was barely holding it together. Someone needed to take responsibility for this mess. And that someone was clearly not going to be their useless mother. The mother cat whom Jonas had now mentally named Void, due to her absolute refusal to care about literally anything, was lounging across his desk, watching her kittens shatter the fundamental laws of physics with all the urgency of someone observing paint dry. Jonas, barely keeping himself from having a nervous breakdown, turned to her. All right, Void, we need to talk. Void, instead of responding, stretched luxuriously, extended her claws just enough to scrape them against his workstation, then yawned a deep, slow, dramatic yawn. Jonas glared. No, you don't get to do the whole mysterious ancient being act. Your kids are out here breaking reality. Maybe you wanna, I don't know, Help. Void flicked an ear and turned her head very slightly, toward him just enough to acknowledge his presence, but not enough to indicate any real engagement. Jonas clenched his jaw. Right, got it. That's a no. Still, he wasn't giving up just yet. If Voight wasn't going to take initiative, maybe she just needed to be reminded that this was her responsibility. So Jonas did the only thing that made sense. He tried to train her. Step 1. Teach Void to herd her kittens back into a single space. It failed immediately. Jonas had spent 30 minutes painstakingly guiding all 3 kittens into a containment area using treats, distractions, and sheer human willpower. The moment he turned around, Void opened her mouth and let out a soft chirp, and all 3 kittens teleported right back to her side. Jonas stared. Void licked her paw. Jonas groaned. You knew they could do that, didn't you? And you just let me waste my time. Void yawned again. Jonas pressed his fingers to his temples. All right, new plan. Step 2. Teach Void to discipline her kittens. Jonas placed her directly in front of Electricity Kitten, who had just bitten through another cable, causing a minor explosion in the corner of the room. Jonas pointed at the smoking remains. Do you see that? Maybe a little motherly intervention. Maybe a little hey, don't eat literal electricity, that's bad for you. Void blinked slowly. Jonas sighed. Just do something. Anything. Void stood up, finally showing a little interest. Jonas held his breath. Maybe this was it. Maybe she was about to. She walked over to her kitten, sniffed him once, and then flopped onto her side, instantly falling asleep. Jonas threw his hands in the air. Are you serious? The kittens, completely unaffected, climbed onto her fluffy belly and immediately started purring. Jonas turned away, muttering curses in 6 different languages. Step 3. Accept reality. Jonas sat on his bunk, staring at the scene before him. The mother was useless. The kittens were unstoppable. It hit him all at once. He hadn't adopted these cats. They had adopted him. He was their human now. Void owned him, and she knew it. She stretched, rolled over slightly, and blinked at him with that ancient, knowing expression only cats could pull off. Jonas groaned. Yeah, I get it. You're in charge. Void purred triumphantly. Jonas buried his face in his hands. He was so screwed. Jonas had developed a morning routine over the years. Wake up, drink coffee, fix the latest catastrophic engineering failure. Repeat, this morning. However, his routine was rudely interrupted by something significantly worse than a malfunctioning oxygen filter. A 3-meter-tall alien stood at his door, and it was armed to the teeth. Jonas, still in his pajamas, hair a disheveled mess, and holding a half-empty mug of coffee, just stared. Human, the alien rumbled, voice deep and mechanical, as if translated through a bad speaker. You are harboring something that does not belong to you. Jonas took a slow sip of his coffee. Yeah, that sounds about right. The alien blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Surrender, the felines, Jonas sighed. Here we go. The alien was massive all muscle, dark armor, and glowing red eyes. Jonas figured he was one of those mercenary types. He looked like someone who had killed entire planetary populations for fun. Jonas, meanwhile, was a tired space engineer wearing a t-shirt with a coffee stain and socks with holes in them. The difference in energy levels was astounding. I don't have all day, human, the alien growled. You will give me the offspring now. Jonas took another slow sip of coffee, then, without breaking eye contact, closed the door in the alien's face. There was a long silence. Then a loud, metallic knock rattled the entire wall. "Human, open this door." Jonas exhaled through his nose. "No, I will break it down." "Good luck with that," Jonas muttered, already walking away. Void, still curled up lazily on his workstation, lifted her head slightly and gave Jonas a questioning glance. "Don't look at me," Jonas said, pointing a finger at her. "This is your fault." Void yawned, stretched, and promptly fell back asleep. Jonas sat down, sipping what remained of his coffee while mentally preparing himself for what came next. Because of course, there was going to be a next. Hunters never gave up that easily. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, his communicator buzzed. "Security alert. Unidentified hostile entity detected near engineering quarters. Proceed with caution." Jonas pinched the bridge of his nose. Fantastic. He turned toward the 3 tiny interdimensional terrors currently wreaking havoc in his quarters. One kitten was floating mid-air, happily chasing its own tail in zero gravity. Another had teleported into the kitchen cabinets and was batting at cans of protein paste like they were toys. The third, well, that one was chewing on another power cable, completely oblivious to the massive alien bounty hunter outside. Jonas sighed. "Okay, listen up, you little chaos gremlins." The kittens stopped what they were doing, looking at him with big, innocent eyes. "Some giant armored lizard out there wants to kidnap you and probably sell you to some black market space zoo or something. That's bad. But the real problem is that you 3 are way too dumb to be kidnapped without blowing up half the station in the process." The kittens continued staring, completely unaffected by the fact that they were actively being hunted by a professional killer. Jonas took another sip of coffee. "Yeah, we're all gonna die." The pounding on the door grew louder. "Last warning, human," the alien growled. "Step aside." Jonas didn't move. Instead, he crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. "Buddy, I don't know what they told you about these kittens, but I promise you, you don't want them." A long pause. "They are the last of a sacred species," the alien intoned. "Their value is immeasurable." Jonas raised an eyebrow. "Right, you sure about that?" There was another heavy knock. Jonas took a deep breath. All right. If you really want them that bad, go ahead. Take 'em. They're all yours." And with that, he opened the door. The alien stepped inside, towering over Jonas, scanning the room and immediately regretting everything. Within seconds, Gravity Kitten floated right up to the alien's face, completely defying physics. The hunter swatted at it instinctively, only for gravity to suddenly reverse, sending him slamming into the ceiling with a loud, metallic crash. Jonas sipped his coffee. "Tough luck, buddy." The alien struggled to move, trying to push himself off the ceiling. What is this?" Teleportation Kitten blinked out of existence, only to reappear directly inside the alien's armor, purring aggressively from somewhere within the suit. The bounty hunter froze, his movements rigid with terror. "Why do I hear purring inside my helmet?" Jonas grinned. "Oh yeah, that one gets into places it shouldn't. Hope you like surprises." The alien thrashed, trying to shake the kitten out of his armor. But before he could react, Electricity Kitten decided it was time to contribute by biting into the bounty hunter's weapon. There was a bright flash of energy, a loud crackle, and suddenly, the alien's entire armor system short-circuited. His body locked up instantly, and with a loud thud, he collapsed onto the floor like a frozen statue. Jonas took another calm sip of coffee. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's what I thought." The room fell silent. The kittens, pleased with their efforts, all pranced back to Void, who true to form didn't care at all. Jonas sighed, kneeling beside the immobilized bounty hunter. Listen, man, I tried to warn you. These little demons aren't worth it. Just take the loss and move on. The alien's helmet visor flickered, barely functioning. I underestimated them. Jonas snorted. Yeah, no kidding. Then, with a sympathetic pat on the hunter's shoulder, he got up and stretched. Well, you're not dead, so that's a win. I'd help you out, but I feel like if I reactivate your suit, you'll try to kill me again, and I don't have time for that. The alien groaned. Jonas shrugged. Don't take it personally. I don't have time for anything anymore. And with that, he left the paralyzed alien hunter lying on his floor, still slightly smoking from the electrical shock, while Jonas casually walked back to his workstation because, quite frankly, he had way bigger problems to deal with. Jonas had been expecting more trouble after dealing with the bounty hunter. He just hadn't expected it to arrive in the form of an official diplomatic envoy. Yet, there they were, a delegation of highly decorated alien officials, dressed in elaborate robes, standing in the middle of his engineering bay with all the importance and dignity of intergalactic ambassadors. Jonas, once again, was in his pajamas, sipping coffee and regretting all of his life choices. One of the officials, a tall creature with a pulsating bioluminescent crest, stepped forward and cleared its throat. Human engineer Jonas Carter, you are currently in possession of 3 Felinari offspring. This is an act of extreme diplomatic sensitivity. Jonas stared. We have come to negotiate their return. Jonas took another slow sip of coffee and set his mug down. Right, sure. You want the cats. The officials perked up, clearly not expecting cooperation. Yes, we do. Jonas gestured toward his workstation, where Void was sprawled out luxuriously, her tail flicking in absolute boredom. Great, Jonas said. Then you'll have to negotiate with her. A long, stunned silence followed. One of the diplomats blinked. I'm sorry, did you just? Jonas crossed his arms. She's the mum. Not my decision. The delegation turned slowly to look at Void, who was now licking her paw, completely unbothered by intergalactic politics. The lead official cleared its throat again. Surely, you don't mean to imply that we should, parley with a feline? Jonas nodded. Yep, you want the kittens? Convince her. This was not part of the diplomatic playbook. The officials huddled together, whispering in hushed, frantic tones. Jonas watched in amused silence, occasionally glancing at Void, who had now rolled onto her back, stretching out as if she owned the entire universe. One of the officials turned back, visibly uncomfortable. We have no precedent for this. Jonas shrugged. Yeah, welcome to dealing with cats. After 10 minutes of awkward deliberation, one of the officials hesitantly approached Void. The entire room fell deathly silent as the diplomat carefully knelt beside the feline and attempted first contact. Honorable Felinari Matriarch, the alien began, voice trembling with formality. We humbly request. Void yawned in his face. The official froze. Void stretched, turned slightly, and flicked her tail in such a way that it accidentally shut off the entire station's security system. Jonas sighed. And now she's hacking the station. Fantastic. At this point, the delegation was visibly sweating. One of them turned back to Jonas. Does she understand negotiation? Jonas smirked. Buddy, she doesn't even understand the concept of personal space. Your best bet is bribery. The officials scrambled to discuss a strategy. Finally, one of them hesitantly pulled out a small golden artifact, offering it toward Void. We present this sacred relic as a token of Void, lazily battered it off the table. The artifact clattered to the ground. The entire room went dead silent. Jonas casually picked up his coffee. Yeah, that's a no. The lead diplomat looked utterly defeated. Human, is there truly no way to persuade her? Jonas considered it for a second. Well, you could try offering food. The officials scrambled to produce some kind of offering. Within seconds, a plate of expensive delicacies from across the galaxy was placed before Void, complete with shimmering cubes of energy-infused protein. Void sniffed it once, then turned away, unimpressed. Jonas grinned. Oh, that's rough. She's saying your cooking sucks. One of the officials looked like he was about to collapse from stress. How do we proceed? Jonas shrugged. I mean, you could pet her. The delegation stared at him in horror. One of them whispered, touch the Felinari matriarch. That could be seen as a grave insult. Jonas rolled his eyes. Relax, if she doesn't like it, she'll just ignore you. One official gathered his courage, slowly reached out a hand, and Voight stood up, turned her back on them, and promptly fell asleep. Jonas leaned back, smirking. Yeah, I think that means negotiations are over. The lead diplomat buried his face in his hands. Humans are impossible. Jonas took a final sip of coffee. Yup, welcome to the club. The diplomatic approach had failed. The officials, frustrated with their inability to negotiate with a literal cat, finally resorted to Plan B, taking the kittens by force. Jonas saw it coming the moment the first mercenary squad stormed into the station's corridors. Ah, here we go, he muttered, watching through the security cams as a heavily armed group of alien soldiers advanced toward his quarters. They moved in tight formation, weapons ready, their expressions set with military precision. Jonas, still holding his coffee, sighed. You guys have no idea what you're walking into. Void stretched lazily, her tail flicking over the control panel, accidentally hacking the station's defense system again. Jonas didn't even bother stopping her. At this point, what was the worst that could happen? The first mercenary reached the door and tried to breach it. The door slid open on its own. Inside, 3 tiny, adorable kittens sat in the center of the room, blinking up at them with big, innocent eyes. The lead soldier hesitated. Are we sure these are the right targets? Another soldier, gripping his plasma rifle, swallowed hard. They look kind of small. Are we really doing this? Orders are orders, the captain snapped. Move in. They took one step forward. That was their first mistake. The rebellion began. Gravity Kitten leaped into action, quite literally, by removing gravity itself. Suddenly, the entire mercenary squad was floating helplessly, their weapons slipping from their hands as they tumbled through the air. One soldier flailed. Why am I upside down? I can't aim. Jonas, watching from the sidelines, smirked. Yeah, gravity's optional around here. The second kitten teleported directly onto the captain's helmet, purring loudly, causing the leader to spin around in blind panic. Get it off, it's in my helmet. Jonas took another sip of coffee. You'll get used to it. Then came Electricity Kitten. It let out a single tiny meowand, then bit into the nearest energy conduit. The lights exploded in a shower of sparks. The mercenaries' armor short-circuited instantly, causing them to collapse in twitching, smoking heaps as their shields and weapons overloaded at once. Jonas raised an eyebrow. That's 3 squads down. Who's next? As more mercenaries flooded the station, things escalated into a full-blown war. Teleportation Kitten was now strategically moving enemy soldiers into random locations across the ship, leaving them trapped in supply closets, bathrooms, and one somehow inside an air vent. Gravity Kitten turned the cafeteria upside down, sending enemies and tables alike spinning into the ceiling. And Electricity Kitten, well, it had started a ship-wide blackout again. Casualties were stacking up, not from actual injuries, but from sheer, overwhelming confusion. Alien mercenaries, trained in advanced warfare, were being defeated by kittens. Meanwhile, Void, the matriarch of chaos, was still asleep on Jonas' workstation. At one point, a mercenary tried to shoot her. She opened one eye, stared at him with the disappointment of an ancient god, and then simply rolled over, pressing a random button on the console. Every mercenary's weapon deactivated simultaneously. Jonas chuckled. Yeah, you really thought you were in control, huh? By the time the seventh wave of soldiers retreated, their ranks devastated, their morale crushed. The once fearsome invaders were stammering into their comms, requesting immediate extraction. We were outmatched. I repeat, we are being annihilated by... There was a brief pause. By cats. Jonas smirked. Damn right you are. By now, the intergalactic community had learned a crucial lesson. Never mess with humans and their stubbornness. Despite their best efforts, despite sending mercenaries, diplomats, and elite task forces, Jonas still had the kittens. And the worst part, he wasn't even trying that hard. The Confederation, collectively exhausted, finally threw in the towel. Forget it, one official muttered. The human wins. Let's leave before this gets any worse. For a moment, it seemed like this ridiculous war over space cats was finally over. And then, the final hunter arrived. He wasn't like the others. He didn't wear fancy armor, didn't come with a squad of mercenaries, and didn't bother with diplomatic nonsense. He was a legendary bounty hunter, the kind of guy that entire planets whispered about in fear. He was the boogeyman of the galaxy, the guy people called when they wanted something done permanently. He stepped into the station alone, towering over Jonas with a quiet, deadly confidence. You are the human, he said. Jonas, sitting at his desk, stirring sugar into his coffee, looked up, unimpressed. Yep. The bounty hunter narrowed his eyes. The one who has defied the Galactic Confederation, destroyed mercenary forces, and humiliated the best hunters in the quadrant. Jonas took a slow sip of his coffee. I mean, yeah, but not on purpose. The bounty hunter's expression didn't change. You will surrender the Felinari. Jonas exhaled through his nose, put his coffee down, and rubbed his temples. Look, man, you seem tough, and I respect that. But I'm gonna be honest with you. He gestured toward the door of his quarters. If you want the cats so badly, go get them. A long silence. The bounty hunter smirked. Ha, that's the bravest mistake you'll ever make. He stepped forward and entered the room. 5 seconds later, the door slammed open, and the bounty hunter staggered back out. His armor was scratched to hell, his face pale, and his expression completely destroyed. He was shaking. Forget it, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Jonas raised an eyebrow. Wow, that was fast. The bounty hunter looked at him, eyes wide. They're not animals. They're void-spawned horrors. They cannot be tamed. Jonas nodded. Yep. The bounty hunter's hands trembled as he tried to reattach a piece of his shredded armor. I have hunted the deadliest creatures in existence. I have battled in arenas where only one warrior leaves alive. I have never feared anything before today. Jonas took a sip of coffee. Sounds rough. The bounty hunter just shook his head, muttering something about teeth like black holes, and purring that echoes through time, then turned and left forever. Jonas stretched and turned toward Void, still curled up, blissfully unaware that she had just ruined yet another galactic warrior. You know, he mused, I should probably start charging people for these therapy sessions. Void yawned. Jonas smirked. Yeah, I figured you wouldn't care. In the end, the entire galaxy surrendered. After countless failed attempts, diplomatic disasters, and military humiliations, the Intergalactic Confederation finally accepted the universal truth. Humans and their cats were an unstoppable force. A new law was drafted. No species shall, under any circumstance, attempt to domesticate, capture, or otherwise interfere with felonary life forms, ever. They named it the Carter Amendment, in honor of one very stubborn human who had proven, once and for all, that some things simply could not be controlled. Jonas, meanwhile, sat in his usual spot, watching as the three cosmic horrors he now called his kids gleefully ignored physics while playing with an object that absolutely should not exist in this dimension. At some point, he had stopped questioning it. The only thing he could do now was make sure they didn't break the space-time continuum before dinner. That was his life now. Parenting interdimensional kittens, fantastic void, the cause of all this madness, stretched luxuriously before hopping onto Jonas' chest. She kneaded at his shirt with precisely zero concern for galactic affairs, then flopped down, purring softly, completely satisfied. Jonas sighed. Yeah, that's what I thought. And just like that, as if none of it had ever happened, the mother of all chaos fell asleep. Jonas stared at the ceiling. I should have just ignored that damn cat. But deep down, he knew that was never an option.